Oh, we don't want to throw around the word masterpiece too loosely, but this is one of the significant landmark UPA cartoons.
Yes, absolutely. John Hubley, this is one of his classics, along with many, many others. And strangely enough, though, this one was nominated but didn't win, and it should have won an Academy Award.
Great names coming up on this player piano roll here. All of them really masters at what they did, and they all collaborated under Hubley's supervision to make this cartoon the special cartoon it is. The voice you hear singing is Annette Warren, who was a very busy vocalist and often a dubber. She dubbed the singing voices of many famous actresses in Hollywood at the time. And that's the voice you just heard of. The bailiff was Thurl Ravenscroft, one of the great cartoon voices of all time, a great singer, great narrator. People know him, I guess, as the singing narrator of Chuck Jones' How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Right.
And he was also Tony the Tiger.
That's what really people know him from. And
but look at the bold colors here. I mean, who would plan to use colors this way anywhere but at UPA? And look at those jurors are drawn, like a Braque painting. I mean, again, this is the influence of modern art and modern graphics on UPA, and it explains why this cartoon took so long to do. It was considered, I think, one of their most ambitious and expensive productions.
This one also, again, highlighting these great restorations on this disc. The color design is really radical. There's reds against reds, whites against whites, blue against blue. You don't do that because it won't read. And when you see an inferior version of these, and unfortunately that's the way it's been for many years, it's really a hard to see cartoon. But the way it is here, it's vivid and alive and what the filmmaker intended, and it's a masterpiece.
Look at those textures. It looks like they sponged some of those textures onto the background there.
That's what they did.
And I know, it's just extraordinary. Paul Julian was the designer and credited also with the color palette for this film, working very closely, I'm sure, with John Hubley. And Paul Julian had done some pretty bold experimental things with Chuck Jones at Warner Brothers in the early 40s, where they were trying to stretch the boundaries even then, a decade before this cartoon.
And Julian really pioneered kind of a painterly look in the backgrounds, an abstract painterly look. You'll see a lot of his great work in The Telltale Heart. He's also well known. He also did the opening of the Twilight Zone, that first season that's more paintings.
Again, look at the character design. Each one individual, each one different. They're not in any way standard cartoon characters. And that was the announcement that UPA was making. And interestingly, they were noticed. These cartoons got major review space in all the top magazines and newspapers of the time. They not only were nominated for multiple Academy Awards and won quite a few, but the leading critics of the day praised them to the skies.
What I find interesting is that the animators on this are the absolute classic Disney-style animators. People like Art Babbitt is doing the attorney, and Grim Natwick, who started animating in the 20s, is one of the main animators as well. And their style adapts perfectly to this new style of cartooning.
Yeah, exactly. It says that they weren't boxed into any one formula. They did what was required of them. I mean, Grim Natwick helped design the original Betty Boop and was the principal animator on the character of Snow White. So he got typecast by many people as doing female characters. But he was a talented artist, a trained artist, an animator, who could do whatever the task required, and you can see it at work here. I also want to mention Phil Moore, who's credited with the music. This is one of the very few screen credits he ever received, simply because he was black. And it was hard for someone of African-American descent to get into the Hollywood music industry. A lot of them would work anonymously, as he did, apparently contributing orchestrations to a lot of MGM musicals in the 40s, but never with any credit. And John Hubley was especially proud that he was able to not only hire Phil Moore, but to give him credit. He was a very talented musician and a composer, arranger. He had a big hit record, a very jazzy hit record in the 40s with the Andrews Sisters called Shoo Shoo Baby, kind of a hip song, which exemplified the kind of music that he played and composed. And he did a great job on Rooty Toot Toot.
This sort of art and animation would become commonplace in TV commercials, 10 years later, And,
Well, even sooner than that, I
Yeah.
think, because a lot of these same people, including UPA, did TV commercials, and they found that the ad agencies were open to the idea of using modern graphics and clean graphic styles for the purpose of selling products.
But still in 1952, in a theater, this is an unusual film and a real treat, for audiences. It's definitely not the usual.
Exactly.
Short
And
subject.
again, aimed principally at adults. This is not a kid's cartoon. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the kids seeing it. It's a twist on the old Frankie and Johnny tale, but it's really an adult cartoon in its sensibilities as well as its design and styling and its humor.
Yeah.
And if I were a kid and I had wandered into a theater showing this in the early 50s, I wouldn't have known what to make of it, which we've said about some of the other cartoons on this collection as well. But that's not meant to be a put down. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's saying just how bold and revolutionary UPA was to break the mold not only of the look and the feel and the content of cartoons, but the very category of theatrical animated cartoons at that time, which were always meant for general audiences, not just for kids, but were still, gathered together for Saturday matinee showings, and thought of as something that the kids could always see.
Well, many of these cartoons we're commenting on this disc were never shown on television ever.
No, they never got TV release.
No, because they just could not justify it as kids' cartoons. Telltale Heart, Rooty Toot Toot, Unicorn and Guard, these never played on Nickelodeon.
No. Well, and more power to them, actually, which is why it's so exciting to have them on this DVD collection now, at last.
'Cause he done her wrong.